Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I want to share with you the 5 in a row curriculum. Now this is a literature-based unit study approach, and this curriculum is designed for ages 4 to 8, but you also have a before 5 in a row, which is designed for ages 2 to 4, and if you want to continue, there's also beyond 5 in a row, and this is designed for ages 8 to 12. Now, 5 in a row comes with 4 volumes, and the first 3 volumes can be used in any order you'd like, but the 4th volume is a little bit more advanced. 5 in a row is designed in a way that you're reading one picture book for 5 days in a row, and on each day you're going to do a different lesson. So I'm going to take you through the curriculum so that you can get an idea of how to use it. But first I want to just say that I have borrowed this curriculum from a friend, so we have not used it, nor do we have any intentions of using it in the future, but I have reviewed it so that I can give you my best and most honest opinion about it. So this was designed by a teacher, and it is literature-based, which is fantastic. And because of this age group, 4 to 8-year-olds, it uses picture books as the literature, which I think is all the better because picture books are beautiful because of their illustrations, and I think that the content is usually really well done. So the table of contents is going to go through all the different picture books that are used for this volume. Now in all 4 volumes, they're going to cover about 70 different picture books. Now this curriculum itself is pretty well priced at about $35 for this volume. But if you were to buy all of the picture books to accompany this, then the picture books themselves are going to be well over $100. And so the curriculum advises that you pick up the books from the library or secondhand, or used books, because that will really dramatically cut down on the cost of the curriculum. At the bottom here, you've got your reproducibles and other materials for the curriculum, which I think is really fantastic because it will cut down on the time that you need to do your own manipulatives and your own worksheets. So at the back of the book, you have these different worksheets that you can copy and then cut apart or color in or whatever you need to do. And also it tells you what book it is designed for. Also at the back of the book, you are going to have your discs, your story discs here, and they accompany each of the books in this volume, as well as your blank discs. And I'm going to explain how these are used with the curriculum in a little bit. Okay, so moving on, you have your introduction. You also have a section about the books themselves, why the books are chosen, and it's basically for content and illustrations. Now, this is, in my opinion, still a secular curriculum. However, the picture books that are chosen with a Christian worldview. And while all of the lessons that I've seen so far are not Christian based, there is an additional curriculum that you can buy that will bring more biblical references and more Christian references to the books that are chosen here. So the books have been chosen with a particular worldview. However, this particular curriculum I feel is still secular in nature. All right, so now it's going to tell you how to use 5 in a row. And this approach is really fantastic. You're going to be taking one picture book that you're going to be reading for 5 days in a row, but each day you're going to be choosing a different subject area to discuss and do a lesson about. So it's going to explain all the different subject areas here, and social studies is pretty broad. It's going to cover culture and geography and some other areas of study. Language arts is also going to be fairly broad as well. There's art, math, and science. And the way that the book is designed is that you are going to have multiple lessons to choose from. So if we flip over here to the first story, which by the way can be done in any order that you'd like. However, I did notice that on occasion, some of the lessons would refer to picture books that were previously done. So that's just something that you want to keep in mind. But suppose you've gone to the library to pick up the books and you don't have them in the particular order that this curriculum is laid out with, then that's okay. You can still do whatever picture books you have on hand. And also, I'm going to give you a tip on how you can use this curriculum to design your own literature-based unit study approach using this concept. So the first story is going to have multiple lessons here. So you can see there's over 10 lessons, and that's just for one book. And this curriculum is designed to work over the span of 1 week. So that would be 5 days, school week, so 5 school days. And there are so many different lessons here to choose from. And so you now get to choose the lessons that you want to do based on the ones that are provided. It's recommended that you do the most important lesson on day 1 so that that lesson can be revisited throughout the week. Now, you're not going to actually do the same lesson over again throughout the week, but because you're reading the same picture book over the course of the week, those ideas that were learned on day 1 are going to naturally be revisited on day 2 when the child is looking at the picture book and listening to it being read aloud. Some of those ideas that were covered on day 1 are naturally going to come back up on day 2. And then again, they're going to naturally come back up on day 3, as well as those new concepts that were studied the day before. So I really like this multi-day approach to doing these lessons because it is a natural way for a lot of these concepts to come back up and be revisited and reviewed in the course of the week. So every lesson is going to have the opportunity to be reviewed at least 1 or more times, except for the lesson that you do on Friday. So you can see that they're divided up into these different subject areas. You have social studies, but you have it 3 times, but each time you have a different subcategory within that. Now that's where your story discs are going to come in handy. At the back of the book, they have story discs for each of the stories, and you can print this off and then cut them out and maybe color them in if you'd like. And then you can paste these onto a world map so that these different stories can have some placement on a world map. And that will help with your geography and social studies subject areas. You have literature, and you can see that you have multiple lessons under literature, which means that if you wanted to do just one in each category, you would have multiple lessons to choose from. So you could do a social studies lesson on Monday, a literature lesson on Tuesday, or you could focus mainly on social studies and do them for 3 days in a row. I think that this curriculum allows for a lot of flexibility and variety in how you approach this. And also, suppose you really like this approach, but you want to change up the books. This curriculum is going to give you ideas on how to make lessons from the picture books. And as you go through this, I think that you'll find that eventually you can start to create your own lessons based on the picture books that you already either already have in your home or ones that you're going to pick up from the library. Art is definitely a focus for this curriculum, especially because we're looking at picture books. And so for me, picture books are an opportunity to expose my children to beautiful, wonderful art. I feel like going through a picture book is one of the best ways to expose my children to art. It doesn't have to be classic art that you'll find in a museum. I still think that it is worthy art that can be looked at, enjoyed, and in this case, for this curriculum, broken down and like your child will critique the art and learn the different art techniques. And this is something that I think is of great value. However, for our purposes in our homeschool, we would save these kinds of lessons for a later grade. But if you are interested in following the curriculum more accurately, then you could still do this with a young child where you are looking at the different art mediums that are used with the different picture books, and you can explain what kind of medium is being used and what kind of art techniques are being used. And then eventually you can recreate some of those different art techniques in your own artwork as one of the lesson activities. So you can see that for this particular book, you've got already 5 different art lessons that you can choose from, but each one has a different category within that subject area. And then you can continue on. You've got math, you have several science ones to choose from. All right, so then you can move on to your next book. Now, this is the structure, the basic structure of the curriculum, but you of course will need other things in order to complement this curriculum. Now you can buy literature packages online with all the different books that you need for the different volumes, but you're also going to need to invest in a couple other things, especially your art supplies, since art is going to be a focus throughout this whole curriculum. You may use other notebooks and other things, flashcards especially, in order to complement this curriculum, but for the most part you're going to have everything that you need within this curriculum in order to do the lessons, at least orally or verbally, with your child. So there's a lot of things that you can simply do by discussion, but some of the other things that you're going to want to have on hand, in addition to flashcards and art supplies, are a world map, or at least some kind of map to show the geography, especially if you're going to be doing those different subject areas, because that's going to be important in being able to compare where the different books are from, the different locations that they're set in, and then just give like some context to where that child is living in relation to where the books are taking place. So let me flip ahead here to Night of the Moon Jellies, and I'm going to walk you through this entire lesson. So the first thing you're going to do is read the book. Now, if you are not purchasing all the books for this volume, then you probably want to start looking for them at used bookstores or start checking them out from the library. So if I were doing this, I would go in to my local library and see how many books I can actually check out to begin with and work with those ones first, and then start to add other titles into my hold account or transfer account so that those books can slowly come in as we're working through this curriculum. Now, on occasion, you're going to want to go through all the different lessons so that you are familiar with what you're going to want to illuminate each day while you're doing these different lessons. That's going to be really of value for you so that you're not backtracking and rereading the book and then moving forward with the lessons and then thinking, oh, I should have mentioned something while we were reading the book. So there is a minimal amount of prep time that's going to be necessary to do this curriculum, but again, not very much. And I forgot to mention that this curriculum also recommends that you supplement it with a phonics program and a math program, because while language arts and math are included in this unit study approach, they're not going to be sequential and skill-based math and language arts. They're going to be more focused on a particular subject area within math and language arts. So there's some things that your child could probably do independent of a math program, simple addition and counting and those kinds of things related to number recognition and simple addition and even subtraction. But then there's going to be other things that you may want to choose to do within this curriculum, or that you're going to do independent of the curriculum with a math program. And same goes with language arts. There's going to be recognition of poetry and of the sentence structure and comparing and contrasting different sentences, but it's not specifically a phonics program, so you're going to want to do that separately to meet the needs of your child depending on his abilities. Something else that's really great about this curriculum is that I feel that it spans not just the 4 to 8-year-old range, but really even wider than that. If you're reading a picture book, at least in our home, when I'm reading a picture book, it suits the needs of as young as toddlers all the way up until nearly puberty. And I know that's a huge age range, but a curriculum like this is really going to help you add activities that can suit the needs of multiple children. And anytime a curriculum is able to do that, for me, that bumps it up to a good curriculum, because when we're homeschooling, usually we're homeschooling multiple ages and multiple grades, and it's of value to have a curriculum that's going to be flexible in order to meet the needs of multiple students. Now, granted, it can't meet the needs of all of your students all the time. But whenever I'm reading a picture book, I know that my kids are all going to collect next to me and listen to the picture book and look at the beautiful illustrations. And sometimes it's simply just to read a picture book, but this curriculum is also going to give you ideas on how to extract lessons from that. So while there may be some lessons that I wouldn't do with a young child, I think some of the other things like the art critique would be fantastic for a much older child. And so that's why I think this curriculum is really great for not just the 4 to 8-year-old age range, but even beyond. All right, so let's go through this first lesson here. It's set up with your social studies coming up first for this particular lesson or for this particular story, but I feel like you could go through and decide what lesson you wanted to have first. And remember to use the most important lesson, the one that you want to revisit multiple times throughout that week period, so that that particular lesson is being reviewed and revisited multiple times in that week. So the first one is a social studies lesson, and it's based on geography and more specifically on New England. So the first lesson suggests that you identify the states that make up New England and even give a little background of why those states are called New England. This would be a good opportunity to pull out a map and show where those states are on a US map as well as on a world map. That way you can bring in a little bit of history into that particular lesson. The next lesson for social studies is Introduction to Running a Small Business. So you can see that within the social studies subject area, you can break it down, have lots of different smaller specific subject areas. So running a business is put under social studies. And in this story, it talks about a young child who's about 7 who is helping with a family business. So it's going to go in and explain some of those things. Now, if I were doing this with a 4-year-old or 5-year-old, I might simplify this particular lesson. But if I were doing this lesson with an 8, 9, or 10-year-old, then I could probably make it a little bit more advanced and go into a little bit more detail. Now, some of these lessons can be rather short, but I found that some other lessons could be more lengthy. So I want to take you for a minute all the way to one of the art lessons. And over here, you have a variety of different art lessons. In fact, you have quite a few. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different art lessons. And one of them suggests looking at the way that the book has been designed with the illustrations and the text. And this particular book is designed with really long rectangular illustrations that span 2 pages with the text kind of near the top on both pages. So this is a layout design that's used with some picture books. So one of the art lessons suggests writing and illustrating your own book. Now, if we were doing this in our homeschool, writing and illustrating a picture book would take more than 1 day. So I might suggest doing this at the beginning of the week and beginning this particular lesson on Monday and continuing it through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday while simultaneously doing smaller lessons that are suggested in this curriculum for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So you can go through and scan the different lessons and see which ones are more lengthy and which ones are shorter. And within each lesson, you can make them as long or as short as you want. So for instance, in the very first lesson, the social studies lesson on geography, you could simply identify those states on a map and be done with it. Or you could get more involved with this, especially if you had an older child who happened to be studying U.S. history in an older grade, then you might go in and do more with this lesson. Maybe bring in a historical aspect to this lesson, or maybe learn how to write these different words, something that can increase the meat of the lesson and also make it longer. But if you're working with really young children, I would keep these lessons as short and tidy as possible. Now, some children might find reading the book over and over again tedious. However, I found that in most cases, children do enjoy reading the book multiple times in the week. So if you're finding that reading the book over and over again is a challenge, the website itself has some tips on how to encourage your children to listen and participate with the lessons over and over again throughout the week. But one other tip that I would give, if your children really, really dislike that aspect of it, which in my opinion I feel would be a small percentage of the children, because I've noticed that most of the time children will enjoy looking and listening to a story multiple days in a row. But you could divide this up into, like, say, multiple units working simultaneously together. So you could do Night of the Moon Jellies every Monday for 5 weeks, and you could choose one of the other books, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, let's say, every Tuesday for 5 weeks. That way you are splitting up how often you're reading the book. Well, you're still reading it the same amount of time, but you are now going to do it every Monday for 5 weeks. You'll do this one every Tuesday for 5 weeks. And that way you'll still get through all the different lessons, but they won't be every day for 1 week. So that's one tip that you might choose if your children really are resistant to reading the book every day for 5 days in a row. All right, so let's move on to a couple other lessons. You have another social studies lesson on responsibility, and then another one on life near the sea. And this would also be a good opportunity to do a little bit of art mixed in here, which would kind of coordinate with one of the other art lessons with, recreating one of the ocean scenes from the book. You have language. I really am enjoying the different language lessons, because they bring about things that maybe you would not normally think about when you're reading a book. So for this lesson, you've got contrast, and you have the lesson says to look at some of the different pictures and the different words to see the contrast between, say, the really busy morning with all the customers coming in to the little shop versus, say, the late afternoon where the grandma and the child are gazing out at the sea and there's kind of a calmness. And what I like also is that then it suggests asking your child, which scene do you prefer? And neither answer is going to be correct. It just depends on what the child prefers, because some people prefer the busy bustle of life and the noise and the chaos, and other people prefer more of the calm, serene, quiet time. And this is just a great opportunity to discuss those things that don't have a right or wrong answer. They're just great topics for discussion. Moving on, you have other language lessons. This one talks about the first person point of view, just explains that this particular story is written in the child's point of view. So you're going to see words like I, me, and mine. And this to me seems like a really short lesson. However, once you do this lesson one time with this story, the next time you see another story that's in the first person point of view, you can refer back to this lesson. So I like how some of these lessons will be able to move on to other books that you'll be reading within this curriculum. It has a section on vocabulary, which of course you could add your own vocabulary to this depending on, this book itself, or even other books. At least it gives you an idea on a lesson that you can do based on this example. So you could do this again in a different book. You could do vocabulary. You could even add it to a spelling list, for instance, if your child was older. And then down here it starts with the art lessons. So the first one is talking about pastels. It also gives you some good reminders about, supervising your child when they're using different art mediums. Then you go into the art layout, adding details to the story, and this is where I would feel like your project could take longer than a day. art viewpoint all the way into light and dark, warm palettes, and then you get into your math lessons. So I like how many different art lessons there are included in this and in other lessons throughout this book. Math, what I've noticed is that the math is rather simple, and this is appropriate for a unit study approach because math is one of those subject areas that really builds on those skills. You need repetition, you need practice, you need mastery, and so the math, what you could do is you could follow the examples that are given, and it also gives you some examples of how to increase the math depending on your child's ability. So for this particular story, Night of the Moon Jellies, it talks about math in the terms of money. And so if your child is very young and not familiar with money and the coins and the bills, then just exposing your child to the different names given to the different bills, like or to the coins like nickel and dime and whatnot, that would be enough for a really young child. But if your child is older and is already familiar with the quantities, then it would be a great opportunity to do more with the math. You could set up a little shop, you could buy and sell, and you could do more math with that money, addition, subtraction, and of course you can always do 5 pennies to 1 nickel. That kind of math would also be really helpful for, say, a 5, 6, 7-year-old, depending on your child's math ability. All right, it finishes up with some different science lessons. So volume 1 comes with 19 different picture books, as well as all of these extras at the back of the book. And let me show you them in a little bit more detail, because these are great additions to the curriculum. Of course, you could always make your own. It does give you some blank discs so that you can add some of your own ideas. It also has your planning calendar, which is fantastic. And it also has a blank lesson planning sheet, which you can go ahead and photocopy this off so that you can start to set up your different activities throughout the week. Of course, there are some of these other projects that you can do. You can photocopy them, you can cut them out, you can assemble them. And this is really fantastic. It even has some songs at the back of the book. So overall, I think for $35, this curriculum is really a great value. It also is a great value in the sense that I feel teaches you how to do a literature-based unit study approach with picture books, because some of these ideas, maybe they're ones that you could have come up with on your own, but I think a lot of them are ones that you would find a lot of value in either using the curriculum as it is or using it to come up with your own lessons. It gives you ideas on how to come up with your own lessons related to not just these picture books, but any picture book that you wanted to use in your homeschool. Something else that's really great about this curriculum is that I don't think that it's limited just to a homeschooling family. I think this is something that you could definitely do with your children outside of school. It's a great way to connect with your child. It's one of those curricula that are involved. It's teacher-led, which means that the teacher is really involved in the lessons with the students rather than some other curricula that may be more student-driven, where the teacher is not as involved. This teacher may help or explain different things, but the teacher is not actively involved in giving the lessons. I feel like this curriculum is a great way to bond with your child or with your student because of all the involvement. And the other thing is that whenever you're sitting down with a picture book, just that closeness and reading aloud, it creates such warm, fond memories for a child that there are priceless throughout your whole childhood or even throughout your whole homeschooling journey. So if you have used this curriculum, I would love to hear your thoughts about it in the comment section below.